for nightmares. Give it up for Josiah and the rest of the staff for hosting the event tonight. We're in their debt, very grateful to them to help make all of this happen. So tonight we have a book discussion and series of performances with spoken word artist, international superstar, poet laureate of the struggle, Matt Sedillo. Matt Sedillo is my best friend, but aside from that, phenomenal title of distinguishment, he's performed at over 100 colleges and universities. He's performed internationally, including at the University of Cambridge. He's been reviewed by Luis J. Rodriguez, Greg Palast, Roberto Lovato, Gio Mayer, and just any number of various intellectuals. This is not a poet's poet, but a poet laureate of the struggle. Widely considered the best political poet in America, and I believe very soon the world. Yes. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and kick off into a series of questions examining Sedillo's second book of poetry, Sitting on the Second Floor. So, Sitting on the Second Floor is your second book with FlowerSong and third full-length collection of poetry. And this book is a significant departure from your second collection, and first with FlowerSong, Mowing Leaves of Grass. Now a staple amongst ethnic studies departments at UC Berkeley, Cal State University Northridge, and nearly a dozen other campuses. And in some cases required reading. Now, this collection, Sitting on the Second Floor, is a move into sociology, into ethnography, urban policy planning and development. So at what point in the book's development was it clear that this book was going to be something very special, very different, a departure from the previous collection?
Well, first I want to thank Madison for hosting us, and thank you, Dave, for agreeing to say a lot of nice things about me and then ask me questions that you already know the answer to. So I really appreciate that.
Football's a great game.
Yeah, exactly. Sitting on the Second Floor is different from Mowing Leaves of Grass, and Mowing Leaves of Grass is very much written and designed to have a lot of like ethnic studies kind of type of content. It's very much a history book. It's filled with all kinds of Chicano history, all kinds of just general American history, all kinds of dates, stats, just different kinds of things like that. Whereas Sitting on the Second Floor is much more, like you said, a sociology book, kind of a Marxist geography type book. Basically how, cities are designed for the exploitation of people. Now, some of the poems in Sitting on the Second Floor are actually older than some of the poems in Mowing Leaves of Grass. So I really knew when I was collecting Mowing Leaves of Grass what it was designed to be, and I knew what Sitting on the Second Floor was going to be designed to be. So I really like having books that are somewhat complete thoughts with like a few departures. I don't want to hit the same note every time. So I'll have like 2 or 3 departures that kind of like make it interesting or keep it interesting, but for the most part have a kind of complete thought. So Sitting on the Second Floor was really designed to be that way. I had the kind of core poems that were going to be in there that I'd written long ago, and then I wrote some new ones, and then I kind of wrote more poems to give it more body, and those poems I wrote at a time when I was actually studying, doing a year-long study with a sociology professor from Cal State Hills, named Jose Prado. We were doing a year-long study of the Marxist capital. And so that influenced a lot of what I was writing. A lot of what I was writing about kind of was influenced by this, by capital. We're talking about how, like money is like dead labor and all these like really weird, complex things about the commodity fetish and how things are just built not necessarily for how they are used, but necessarily for sale, right? So it's an old saying that GM doesn't make cars, they make money, right? So that kind of like look, that kind of view of the world, like everything you do is designed to make someone else money. So I really wrote Sitting on the Second Floor with the idea that I'm going to write about the city, how the city is designed for your exploitation, like physically laid out for you to be exploited, and that's all it does. That's all the whole function. So that was kind of the vision behind Sitting on the Second Floor. So I really wanted to write a book of poetry that essentially would function in sociology departments the same way that Mowing Leaves of Grass has found success in ethnic studies.
So the title of this book, City on the Second Floor, is at once a reference to an actual place, an actual location in Los Angeles, but it speaks very strongly to the polarization of wealth, not only in Los Angeles, but especially in the United States. This book is full of human stories that help to flesh out that polarization, to make it tangible for both high and low and everywhere in between. It's interwoven with your own personal narrative. Can you speak to some of the challenges of writing about this topic in a variety of different ways?
Yeah, well, so City on the Second Floor is actually, for those who know who are not familiar with downtown LA, it's actually based on the Hotel Bonaventure, where there's actually, it's actually built so that there's bridges that connect all these buildings so you can avoid walking on the street. You can come in, you can do your business, and you go to Kinko's, you can Starbucks, you can go back into the building, you go to this other office, go here, and return to the hotel without ever having to touch the sidewalk. And so that's kind of where the idea of City on the Second Floor came from. When I actually was telling somebody about the title, they thought it was based on Fritz Lang's Metropolis. And I said, no, the Hotel Biltmore is based on Fritz Lang's Metropolis, and my book is based on the Hotel Biltmore. So yes and no. But that's really essentially what it is. I mean, the City on the Second Floor is what's the idea of a world apart. But the title, City on the Second Floor, is really not necessarily about the rich. It's about this layer in between, which most of us fight our whole lives to stay in, right? Which is, not being homeless, not being completely destitute, not holding on to whatever we have, not being completely, out of the loop, not being out of the economy. So that's what City on the Second Floor is about. It's about trying to hold on to that layer, and most people feeling themselves as a part of this general society, but they're, the title poem says, they're laughingly dreaming of a penthouse suite they will never reach, while staring down to the streets as terraces down below. So that's what's really about. The whole book is about this kind of illusions of living this world of capital, living, because America's an extremely wealthy country, so it's an extremely wealthy country. There's a lot of, it's wealthy because of imperialism, but there's all this stuff in this country, and you can grab a hold of some of that stuff. And the more stuff you can grab hold of and stuff your pockets with, the more you think you're a part of, it holds a certain kind of position in society. But that really is very precarious. It's very precarious. You can easily fall. You can easily all go. And that's, really what I wrote the whole book about. So I really wanted to look at it from a working class perspective. I wanted to look at it from being completely excluded from the working class. I guess we would call it lumpen, or Marx would call it, but we would most of us call poor. Looking at it from being excluded from things, and then looking at it from the perspective of the wealthy. Because so there's a couple poems that are caricature poems where I'm embodying what it's like to be rich and what and to take from people and just how much fun it is. The sadistic joy of just I'm so rich, and I really want to kind of look at it from different sides, and so that's kind of how the book is laid out.
Yeah, so you touched upon something actually that I think would be really fun to kick off actually on a lighter note. So then we could end with one of the hard-hitting bangers of the collection, if you're so inclined. So thinking about this book, I very often think about it as a mix between the television series The Wire and The Twilight Zone. That these are speculative futures set in a present day dystopia. And it's a study of power and power relations, and very often the poems serve as cross-cutting narratives between characters who are literally on the extremes of poverty and wealth, crossing each other on the sidewalk. One could imagine that the title character of one poem might run, right past the title character of another. So to speak about the rich, so when you study power, when you write your poems about the powerful, there's no sugarcoating of evil involved. There's no desire to appeal to the better angels within the hearts of the wealthy and the powerful. You do not pull any Christmas carols, any Robin Hoods, any Zorros, any Batmans. The rich are simply evil. But within that, there's a lot of even fun. Do you think you would be willing to perform The Rich for us from this collection?
All right. So this poem I know from movies, so I'll go to the all right. The rich. Well, they're not like you and me. They see an opportunity and grab it. Reach for the stars and they put them in their pocket. Company stays in the red, but they're backed by the government. Snort public diamonds and lines of pure profit. Research and development of the rich. They live and breed. Champagne wishes and caviar dreams. Thoroughbred stallions, quarterly national seed, Puerto Horizon with diamonds. Golden parachute, silicon messiahs, feasting on endangered species, served with silk platters and winter palaces, carved from the tips of icebergs, six-figure charters, vulture capital, million-dollar coffins with life like an apple, insured by suicide nets, lifestyles of the criminally negligent that you haven't lived. So you've launched a car in space for no reason. And that's why I call freedom. The rich, well, here's how it is. Dollars and cents, trademark and rent, facts and figures, lines and ledger, derivatives and debt, building the future, increasing productivity, union busting back to the 100-hour work week to be the fact, pushing monopolies with money, shortage of best, that my friend, so the rich stay rich will the rest, make poor decisions in its pure ecstasy, living in the lap of luxury, pushing pharmaceuticals to the market will bear your body to its altar, and a life or death bargain, the gospel of wealth, because it is what it is, and that's all it's ever been. The less we spend, the more we keep. You see, the rich and the poor, well, they're just like you. 2 hands, 2 feet. The sky, the sea, and everything between, one heart that beats, and the time to make the most of it, to find no sympathy. Reach into these deep pockets, all we were asked was for our fair share. Damn it! That's all it's around the streets, scream for peace and justice. We sleep in satin sheets, dream free and guiltless, over oceans and tariffs, liquidating pensions that not forbid, on porcelain portraits at billion-dollar auctions. You know you need us, you know we're selling your secrets, you know some us DNA kids, watching the puppets on television to make freedom, free speech, fascism, democracy, will reach the earth, punch the ozone, and fuel the economy with space stations. Yes, space stations, hydrating the red planets. We're gonna survive this lava pit. She got pots and pans, we got deeds and plans, chopping down rainforests, colonizing the moon. We're the rich. What are you? We'll privatize the water supply and then copyright the tears falling from your eyes. Burn it all down. What the hell are you talking about? The ice caps already melting. You want to start to eat the rich? We're already killing your kids. 1 carbon footprint, 1 gas house emission, 1 oil rig, 1 naval ship, 1 free trade agreement at a time. We'll get away with it too. Nothing we say or do is ever held against us. Haven't even paid attention. We're rich.
Give a round of applause, please. So that's a fun one to perform, and I'm sure it was fun to write, fun for you to write, and in writing these satirical pieces, do you ever find yourself tempted by the evil? Or, I mean, you always make it very clear, you know, you're always, for example, copywriting the tears falling from your eyes. I always find, you know, a reference to Bechtel and what happened in the efforts to privatize water.
Yep.
And so,
congratulations. You figured it out. I would have got away with it too.
You know, so there are things like that. I think that very clearly, you know, pull away and make it clear that you are talking about, you know, substantive, you know, issues, pressing issues, historical issues. Do you feel the tension between, you know, is this getting too ridiculous? Is this topical enough? How does satire function? What are some of your thoughts on that?
So everything I write, everything I write in 3-act structure. So I have this little thought module called the 3-act poem, in which I take like topic, details, point, act 1, act 2, act 3, right? And so anytime I do a satirical poem, anytime I do a character poem, typically act 1 is going to look like, all right, here is the pitch. This is someone coming up to you and being like, hey, you need to join the army, or hey, you need to hey, why don't you buy these socks, right? Whatever it may be, here's the pitch. And then the second part is like, okay, now that you've got the socks, now that you're in the army, here's the deal, right? And I got that kind of idea from like Scorsese films. Like he always has here's how Wall Street works, blah 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 blah. Here's how the mafia works, blah 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 blah. You don't need to know that, blah 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 blah. And so it's like the character kind of tell you these things, and you feel like you're in on something, and it's really kind of kinetic. It's really even though whatever they're saying might not be true, it doesn't matter. It's just like you're learning the pieces of the world, right? So that's what Act 2 is. You learn the pieces of the world. Then Act 3 is like the flip. It's a switch where it's like, oh, you thought like we were like I invited you into something, and then we were like equals, and that we were like buddies, but no, I'm gonna eat you now. That's right. So Act 1, the rich it's glorious to be rich. Act 2 is like, here's how capitalism works. Act 3 is, oh no, the rich are sociopaths, are gonna leave us to die on a burning planet while they try to colonize the moon. So I knew that going into it. And so when I did my research, I was like, okay, what are the details? I'm gonna talk about Bezos, I'm gonna talk about Elon Musk, I'm trying to work at things in the corporation, I'm gonna try to work in a bunch of different things, these egregious examples of things. So I got the car in space, I got Bezos eating endangered species, I got him staying in like a glacier hotel, I got the phrase vulture capital from Great Palace, I got the references to Tears from Your Eyes, yeah, that's from corporation. So there's all these like points of references to things that exist outside of the poem itself. I always try to write poetry that points outward and not inward. That's kind of my general idea. Which is not to say that people shouldn't write poetry that points inward. That's just my general idea, But if they want to be the best political poet in America, they should point outward. But so that's kind of my idea. So yeah, there's a lot of references in The Rich. As far as like, do I ever feel like the character taking over me? Yeah, well, sometimes I think like, you know what? Maybe I should be a billionaire. But like I can never, but by the time like I really sit down and make an action plan, the feeling is past,
So to pick up on the opposite of this, so in talking about this idea of the polarization of wealth and the two extremes, so you have the rich dealing with these billionaires, and you also have a number of poems in this collection which feature houseless characters, rather. And my personal favorite, the most heartwarming, is Gerald Ford. And within this poem, it's devastating and heartwarming at the same time. But
Christmas poem.
Yeah, I love it. And but within this poem, it has this ethos, or ethos rather. So would you consider performing this poem for us?
All right, I've done this in a long time. December 26, 2006. A homeless man shuffles down the way of Main Street, downtown, anywhere USA. It is the same day Gerald Ford is back. So I'm walking down the street, I think they finally did it. Day after Christmas, the flags at half-mast. The politicians, the preachers, the admin, they moved on. They killed him off. Jesus Christ? Well, he's dead. Which is a big problem. For me, anyhow. People are already broke, and I'm trying to cash in what's ever left of their giving spirit. First tip, never beg. That's right, there's a right and wrong way to everything. Secondly, more importantly, never let on that you have nowhere to go. Try and convince them that you have somewhere you call home. See, anyone can get stranded, but it takes a special case to have absolutely nothing, no one, nowhere, no place like. Maybe they'll think you deserve it. So I hit this kid. Hey, listen, I'm not from around here. He flinches, steps back, so asks, hey man, what's up with the flag? Hallelujah, I say. Jesus Christ lives and he saves. Next year, there'll be soup and sweaters. Guess things aren't looking so hot for Gerald fucking Ford, though, huh? Day after Christmas, and people are crying, flying the flag low for Gerald Ford. And you tell me when Chevy Chase dies, like either one of those clowns, this ain't that funny. See, I'm dying out here. I'm dying out here, but all I ever seem to hear is that we got problems with the youth. Or I'm going to try to be hard on the streets. See, I got the exact opposite problem. These streets, well, they've been pretty damn hard on me. Because with or without a weapon drawn and stuff in alleys and tunnels where the wind cuts you to shreds, blows through you like cannonballs. Yeah, I'm so down now, it's down like criminals. Whether it's security guards, punk kids, or the cops, all fighting back, ever gets you one thing. Can you guess? More cops. All the politicians, all the politicians Well, they're all in unison. The police unions are all in unison. We're far away the city's biggest problem. We'll bring it on the new Nazis. What's your final solution? Because I ain't going nowhere. Because I can't. But you want to know what I got here, right? Well, forget that. Because see, I got some questions and I want some answers. Not sweet hereafter, some final chapters, or some pie in the sky when I die. When I finally do run to Jesus H. Christ, when some godforsaken church charity soup line. But the here and now question like, why must I beg? Why must I lie? You think this couldn't happen to you? You think you're better than me? What's so different about the air that you breathe? A national day of mourning for Gerald Ford. But what good is a nation, a society, a civilization, an economy if it can't make room for everybody? Oh, I brought this on myself? I did this to me? Forget you then. Go on. Go on with your national day of mourning for Gerald Ford. But you tell me this. What 21 gun salute will I receive? Or the hundreds of thousands, the millions just like me sleeping in the street, begging for your scraps, living off your trash, who will so much as lower their head or clasp their hands when we pass by you every day. And I know you're not to blame. But neither am I. Because you see, it's like I said, I'm not really from around here. I'm just trying to go home. And I'd gladly on my way if you could spare some change. Every little bit helps. Oh, I appreciate this. I really do. Merry Christmas. God bless you.
All right. Yeah, give Matt another round of applause for that. Really, his phenomenal ability to tap into character, to tap into the moment, to tap into whatever he's writing and bring out the emotional truth within that is really extraordinary. So, one of the things that you're best known for, probably the most distinguishing characteristic of Matt Sedillo's style, is collision montage. Could you speak a bit to your influences in creating a style in which you're juxtaposing images that are not always chronological, that are crossing boundaries, but are thematically linked?
Right. So people ask me who are your influences, right? I was telling political speakers like Hugo Chavez and Malcolm X and even like Michael Perny and a few others. That's what I always tell them, right? But and they always think I'm lying and it's gotta be poet. But I am lying, because the real truth is my biggest poetic influence was Howard Dean. We're going to Michigan! We're going to go to Maine! But that's what destroyed, for those who are, this is a little bit too old for that reference, that what made Howard Dean late and low is only made me strong, right? It's like, that was the end of his presidential. No, it's from watching people make political speeches and they list something like, and this is for the auto workers, and this is for this, and this is for that, and we're not going to take, no. It's like that kind of like rising action, right? Is what I wanted to do. And so some people would think that it's really influenced by Mary Rock, and I have so much profound respect for the work, the man, the legacy of Mary Rock, but not really. I think we kind of had a similar idea, which is that we're gonna make political speeches into poems. I actually met Mary a couple times. It was pretty wild before he passed. It was Jack Hirschman, the former poet laureate here. He actually set me up at the San Francisco International Poetry Festival. And I had an opportunity to read with Amiri Baraka, and it was just me and him. And I'd only been doing poetry at that point for 2 years. And he set me up. So Jack really did me a lot of solids back then. So I really. But yeah, Amiri was a trip though. Amiri was a trip. Yeah, I remember when I first met Amiri Baraka, I met him in Moore Park, and these people at KPFK were taking him around this radio station there, and they were taking him around town and I guess they've been talking about me. And he comes up to me, he's like, oh, you're the one they've been talking about. I'm like, oh. And I was like, do you have any books? And I had sold out of the book I had then. And he's all like, you come to me without your book? And I'm like, oh, shit. And he's like, that's like going to a gunfight without your pistolas. You don't do that, amigo. But that was a weird rocket, man. It was so cool. Yeah. lot of montages. And they were been some of the best poetic montages ever. So yeah, I write like that because I got it from watching political speeches, but also from watching film. Like I try to like everything. A big student, big lover of the cinema, and so I try to like write in ways that are like dynamic and crisp and just like popping and then like and make sure that everything comes back. So like when I typically do a 3-act structure, I'm gonna like do a world build, then I'm gonna introduce a conflict, and then I'm gonna resolve the conflict using elements of the world build. So it's not like the problems get solved by something that has not already been introduced. So the problem is solved by what's already been introduced. So it's like you always have to straighten it, but like what's corny than that? So that's kind of like what I try to do. And I actually always try to introduce the solution in the transition between Act 1 and Act 2. Wow. So that's like some craft right there, right? Yeah. So like I have a poem called La Reina, and it's with like, here is home of La Reina. And it tells all how sad it is, right? At the end, oh, here La Reina, the once a future queen. That's how it ends, right? You got an old pilgrim, honest Indians and Christian pilgrims, a nation. And it's by the end of the poem, we didn't cross the borders crossed us. Who you calling immigrant? Pilgrim, right? So pilgrim returns with power. It's introduced in a vulnerable way, it returns with power. I'm a big believer in that. I'm a big believer when you write and you really stick a line, like you really like hit that line real hard. By writing that line, you have now created the demand for its opposite. You've created the demand for the opposite statement within the piece. That's just the way I write. Like for me, for me, and I would encourage all writers to do. Don't even listen to me, but listen to yourself and create a standard of excellence that you hold yourself to every time. Develop a style, turn the style to discipline. To the discipline, to a standard of excellence you hold yourself to every time that exists outside of you. And that way, once you develop your own standard of excellence, you become the world's leading expert as to why you're excellent. And when you're the world's leading expert as to why you're excellent, nobody can discredit you. You're not going to seek validation. You're going to know why your work is good. Why your work is good can be a mystery to the audience. Maybe it should be a mystery to the audience, but it should never be a mystery to you. You should know why. And that way, someone can tell you, like, this is blah, blah, blah. I don't care. Like, there's people who I have tremendous respect for. If they were telling me I don't write right, and I don't write, I should write this way or that way, I wouldn't care. Because about the way I write. It's been pretty effective. So, so that's kind of like, that's kind of what I would encourage people to do. Did I even ask the question? I just go off on a tangent.
You certainly did.
Okay.
But it was brilliant.
All right.
It was brilliant. So yeah. So that question was to segue into a poem, and I was thinking of possible poems within this collection that showcase this phenomenal in times where you are being sincere and in times when you are being very clear with your intention and using this style that you're known for. Would be storm warnings, perhaps if 2020 was an election, or just some examples. Would you mind performing one of those poems for us?
Sure. All right, so this is the one. I got to perform this at the Climate March. This is Storm Warnings, and at the big Climate March, the one in LA, not the one in DC or New York. But and I got introduced by Ed Begley, Ed Begley Jr. Yeah, Ed Begley Jr. Let me get that right. Ed Begley Jr. And then this one comes up. He's like, after I was done, right? He's like, "Gracias, man, Sedillo. Gracias." Good dude, though. Good dude. Other than that, don't do that again, Ed. All right, here we go. When all finally comes down, when Titanic finally sinks, when there's nowhere left to hide the money, when the Alps finally melt, when Switzerland becomes a barren desert, and the Caymans are buried miles below sea level, the Fortune 500 will set up tax shelters on the moon. A storm is brewing. From the winds of Fukushima, from the ash of 3 Mile Island, from the criminal negligence, from the killing plunder, you can hear this in thunder. Strip the earth to feed industry, pillage the country to please the city, milk the city to engorge the capital, make weapons capable of destroying the planet, turn profit from tankers that poison the ocean, from factories that darken the sky. A storm is brewing from the ghost of Bhopal. The graveyards of Exxon Valdez From the soot that is rising out of an industrial revolution, a commercial revolution, a Chevy revolution, inviting you to join the mad chorus as the rubber hits the road. Show those who will live in natural rhythm, raise children to the tune of a raindrop sound, the savagery the mechanical man is made of. Let them know that a hard acid rain is going to fall from the Niger Delta to the Cuyahoga, from the holes in the ozone of Mexico City, New Delhi, Cairo, from the geological crime scene of the river Ganges to the bitter harvests of Terminator seeds, from the mountaintops chopped off in the heart of the Appalachia, from the Canadian tar sands, coal seams of the Badlands, the polluted streams of Gasland. There's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, not this time, and a storm is brewing. You best beware for what benefits a man should he gain the world but cannot breathe its air. There's no way to live because this land, the sky, the sea was made for you and for me and for they and for us and for we and for them and for they who are not yet born, who have yet to hear a single raindrop song, and our hearts are stirring, our feet are marching, the choir is rising to those who turn this world, earth to a wasteland, our home to landmines, to save a nickel or scrape thin dimes, with eyes set on mountains of profit. We had best batten down the hatches, cross your fingers and lock your doors, for the storm is brewing. You have been warned.
Yeah.
Oh, what are you doing?
Oh, no. If you want.
Yeah,
If you'd like to.
yeah.
All right. So this poem is.
This poem is if 2020 was an election. Let's see this.
Oh yeah, I love this one. This is banger. This is very topical.
It's very topical. The kids don't say these are topical.
Don't.
Yeah.
But I think this one definitely.
What age range would you say uses the word topical the most? Where is the word?
The kind still thinks the Daily Show is cool. So yeah.
Between 35 and 45. Right. All right, here we go. All right. If 2020 was an election. If you haven't noticed, the air is toxic, the water is poison, the elections are a racket, an empty bucket, hurled towards a burning house we call politics, with billions on the line behind closed doors, lobbies, politicians, disembodied corporations, make the decisions of caged militants to stage debate on the House floor as though their settled vote had not been cast centuries before. This is some Plymouth shit. Some Dixieland, some wild, wild west. America twists again like it did last Cold War. American intelligence will preemptively blame Chinese or Russian interference for the results of an election where half the population will not vote. Decided by an electoral college, meaning the actual vote will not count. The American media will blame unarmed black men for being shot by the police. Police unions will blame anyone with a cell phone for recording the incident. American governors will blame brown workers for a global pandemic, and the American public will blame the rest of the globe for getting bombed by America. If 2020 was an election, it would feature Joe Biden challenging incumbent Donald Trump. Some red states, some blue states, the U.S. Senate, New York real estate, kids in cages, knees on neck, a border wall, a border fence, a bipartisan shot in the legs, a segregationist, a Dixiegrat, a dance with two devils as the country burns to the ground. In case you didn't notice.
Fair enough. So I want to return to the topic of storm warning. So in working on this study of a city and the study of power and study of wealth and class and inequality, to then go to talking about these global issues. Now, a number of the references in storm warnings are also local. They're also, talking about the way that these environmental catastrophes, these driven for profit-driven catastrophes impact small communities, but they're also, yes, they are. The scope ultimately becomes global, and it's this concern of focusing on something very local and something specific while a crisis is happening in the background. And you, unlike, someone, say Al Gore, are not hoping to use the machine, the apparatus, in order to solve this crisis. You are calling for an unequivocal end to all of it. And could you please speak to the number of environmental poems within this collection?
Yeah, so the whole poem, the whole book is basically about the cities are out to get us, the cities are built against us, and there's kind of like a subplot about the environment, about essentially how the industrial way of life is essentially destroying our ability to live on the planet. And that is kind of like this subplot, subcurrent that kind of goes underneath the large thing, which is like the rich and the poor, and exploitation. That's what the main story is, but this little subplot keeps growing and growing and growing and growing and growing until it kind of ends up consuming the book, and that's how the book does end, talking about the sea swallowing this whole. Right, that's how the entire book ends. So like that's kind of like how it was written, because the reality is that societies are organized around the production of goods and services and their distribution. Like no matter what kind of society you have, that's just how it is, right? You have like a small village, it's around like, all right, how are we gonna get the food? How are we gonna get the fish? How are we gonna do this? Who's gonna create spirits? Who's gonna do this? Whatever it may be, it's all about the distribution and the production distribution of just goods and services. And under capitalism, we have this thing where everything's a commodity, where everything is made not for their actual material benefit, but for their sale primarily. That's its first function. It must be sold. It must be a commodity. So that's what happens. Now, since not every sale is guaranteed, this is going to produce islands of trash. This is going to produce, smokestacks in the sky, et cetera, et cetera. Capitalism, my friends, capitalism is trash. So, like, that is what essentially the book is saying. And in the end, that we can't. It's destroying the planet because we don't produce things for their material benefit. We produce things simply to be sold. And not everything's to sell, so that means we're gonna have, and everything's built for obsolete, built not to like last, and for all kinds of reasons. This is not sustainable, and so it's gonna end up with that. So under socialism, under a socialist system, these technologies would still destroy the planet. So, but we would have the ability to change the technologies we use. Like we would have, we'd have a say in how that's done. So that's the kind of, but overall, this whole industrial revolution is destroying planets. This thing's been going on for a few hundred years now, is actually destroying our ability to live here. So that's kind of, the subplot that eventually overtakes the plot of the book.
All right, so to touch upon Mowing Leaves of Grass, classic of ethnic studies, in a way that the current exhibit that surrounds us here in this space examines and deconstructs many of the myths of American history, of American culture, and what various groups within the United States have valued. And one thing that I've really loved recently is the deconstruction of the Western in recent pop culture. And I believe that your work helps to function in a similar way. It examines a lot of these myths. So tying into that is a poem in this collection about the Winchester Mystery House. Can you please speak about the Winchester Mystery House and how a house built that is supposedly one of the most haunted locations in the world ties into the brutality of Manifest Destiny?
Yeah. So the Winchester Mansion. Everyone remember that? Yeah. All right. So it's in San Jose. Basically, there's like the wife of Winchester, the rifle guy. She built this mansion, and it was really designed to trick ghosts, right? To trick the ghosts of all those people killed by the Winchester rifle. Many people say she was really haunted by the idea that that all these natives, the American natives, that were going to come and exact their revenge upon her. And so that's why she built this house with all these rooms that would go into different places. And so that's why I wrote Lady Winchester. But the poem Lady Winchester is interesting because, yes, it's about Winchester, but it's also, I took Yeats's Sailing to Byzantium. I took the structure for Sailing to Byzantium and wrote Lady Winchester. And the structure for Sailing to Byzantium is essentially he's getting like punked by like these young guys who are like, I'll be you old man. And he's like, well, I'm gonna be an old man, but I'm immortal. Like, I'm gonna like live forever. With my poetry, just like Byzantium. Like Byzantium, by the time he writes this is long gone. Constantinople is gone, right? But it's talking about this Byzantium will live forever, right? And so I thought that, I thought it was funny that he was doing that. I didn't think it was like, that's cool and all, but I'm gonna do the opposite. I'm gonna write about things that should die, that should be gone. And I'm gonna take the opposite message, and I'm gonna, what am I gonna do that with? So I had the idea to write the opposite message of Sailing to Byzantium. Take a structure and write the opposite message. Okay, that's what I'm gonna do. What am I gonna write about? Like, well, I don't know, I'll do the Winchester Mansion. And so that's how I wrote that. that is no country for guilty conscience. Laughing, learning in summer near lakes named in remembrance of murder, the young in their way stand as living monuments to generations of forgetting. An aged truth unrenewed is a thing of genocide. The naming of avenue, the making of highway, the forging of boulevard, the foundations of national celebrations, psyches, bodies of literature, schools of cinema, sending pools of blood, O pioneer. This is no place for honest reflection. And I have therefore traveled north, towards doors and staircases that lead nowhere, filled with rooms that reach for the dead, passageways to escape their revenge. Once I heard the story of Lady Winchester, building her mansions the day she died. In her time, a marvel destination for escape artists. Today, sold as mystery to travelers and tourists, as curiosity as it was past and passing, and they too in their way stand as living monuments. In a home built by rifles. In the great American tradition. No. To run from ghosts.
Ah,
That's too good. That's too good. Oh, wow. So at this point, I would like to ask you, I definitely have a poem that I have in mind that I would love for you to close on, but I would like to ask you if there was anything that you felt like reading, that you felt especially from the collection.
Well, I'll be real now. I think you're not going to ask me, so.
Excellent, excellent. And please talk about, is it a poem that you share often?
No.
Is it not? Okay, great, yeah.
No, it's not going to be, no, it's not the long one, so don't worry about that. I have one here called Precarious Rex. It's so ridiculous. I mean, like, it's about like an adjunct professor who lives in San Diego Valley. And people like read it, they think it's me, like, no, like, you think that of me? Is that what you think of me? God damn! Like, and there's like 3 poems in here, and like, one's about an actor in San Bernardino Valley, one's about a professor in San Diego Valley, and one's about this guy who just lost his job in the Inland Empire. And like, they're like, oh man, that one really hit home. Like, I really can tell you really, you don't write about yourself. You really wrote yourself. That's what you think of me? What? Jesus. All right. Yeah, man, you're good friends. All right. He knows Joe. He's a good friend. Man. But there's other people.
Why are they always so wrong when they say that?
Yeah. Your reviews. Oh my god. All right. So that's another story. All right. Here we go. It's what's called Everything Between. And so in this book, there's the sky, the sea, and everything between. This one's everything between. Again, going to the environmental. Gas station, supermarket, food court, coffee shop, bus stop, burrito supreme. Penny stocks, trust funds, checkpoints, bailouts, overdraft fees. Smokestacks, minivans, border fence, tax shelters, nuclear debris. Valley of silicon, islands of plastic, burning river pipelines, food desert landmine, jumbo tanks, Frankie Crake, the carcinogenic Republic of Acid Rain, foggy bottom, the World Bank, the dying forest, the falling trees, the sky depletes with the rising sea as the next horizon greets mass extinction.
Round of applause, please. All right. So the last poem in the collection, I want to close out, and I think this is something that is one of the most powerful things, one of the most important things that Matt could say about this book. But sometimes there's a certain uncomfortability to reflect back upon these times. But a lot of the book comes from the experiences of being houseless or nearly houseless, being destitute, not having health insurance, there not being, state provided, health insurance available, and the desperation and the fear that comes from that. So being able to write about these issues from that personal perspective, I think is really, really important. When there are a number of people who sometimes write about social issues, but do not speak from that lived experience. Could you please speak to that and then perhaps transition into LA is full of pigs.
Yeah. So last poem. I was living kind of in my car for about 2 months in Dallas back in the day, and it was, I was going through a lot of problems, and I had a lot of issues with my father. I went to go work for him. We weren't seeing eye to eye, and next thing you know, just one thing leads to another. And that's what, so a lot of the experience with the road from jail forward came from that. It's like, like a lot of people, think that people lose their mind, and then that's how they end up in the street. Like, no, you try walking around a city and seeing all these things that you can't touch. You see what that does to you. I mean, try it like 2 days ago. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's really, but don't do that, because that's a weird experiment. That weird sociologist. Don't really do it. But I mean, like, I'm being, but no, seriously, like that will really change your, that will really alter your mind. You'll start looking at things and you'll start getting bitter and angry, and your thoughts are not going to make any sense, but they'll make perfect sense to you. And it's a horrible experience. I mean, put me with a pocket knife in the woods. I mean, like don't unleash me into a city with nothing. It's just because you can see it, you can't access it. You can see the world around you. You can't touch it. It's a horrific feeling. And yeah, that was where I was for about 2 months, and eventually came back and moved back to LA, and things turned around. So that was that. But then so I started working again. And I was working retail, and I've always worked like a retail management back then. And I worked my back way, and I had the worst job. The last one I had was the absolute worst of all the jobs. Always getting yelled at and micromanaged. It's horrible. I was an assistant manager too. So like when you're an assistant manager, you don't have like that righteous indignation just being a worker. You have this thing that you also are guilty. So like and so like we don't pay for nothing. Like for small on it. And so like that was me. So I was just like, oh man. And so I remember the store manager screaming and yelling at me, and I feel the digging in my feet, well into my legs, and my stomach finally reached my hands. I took my badge off. I'm a human being, God damn it. I don't have to take this. I quit. I handed her my day badge, right? And I was feeling so good. She said, no, you don't. Pin that back on me. I was there for another 6 months. I thought I had dignity and pride. I had, car bill, I had rent, I had all kinds of things, right? But then the poetry stuff started taking off, and I was able to quit. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna quit. I'm gonna do this. I'm a real artist. And then all of a sudden, I started developing chronic bronchitis. I didn't know what it was. And so I didn't know what it was. I thought like I had lung cancer or something. I was like freaking out, and I was really having to go to the hospital. At that time, poets didn't have health insurance, so I did not know when I quit my job. And so I was just in this horrible situation, and I was worried about my health, and I was worried like, oh my God, I've got these medical bills, so I can like lose my apartment. I'm gonna lose my apartment, then I'm gonna be on the streets. If I'm out on the streets, I'm gonna be in the streets again, and I'm in LA, and I'm the LAPD is just notorious, and like what's gonna happen to me? And so then that's kind of the inspiration for LA is Full of Pigs, dedicated to Los Angeles finest, which is, someone actually had me in court one time as like a character witness, and then like the next day they were like, Matt Sedillo was your character witness, but he said LA is full of pigs. Matt Sedillo, yeah, that was horrifying. Oh, man, yeah. Well, Jesus. Oh, man. Yeah. Jesus. Yeah. Anyways. Oh man, we get traumatized. Sorry, here we go. Yeah. These are very serious poems. Los Angeles falling apart. In the streets, in the suburbs, in the wind. In a barely kept Hollywood bathroom, wheezing, vomiting, coughing up blood. These past few days, these past few years, I've spread myself across the sprawl. And I fear this driving to kill me. It kills all. I wonder. Over General Hospital, between whose walls observation was in high concentration. Upon the faces of the shop-worn, prematurely ill alike. As they wait upon the news of illness they cannot afford to have, survival without insurance. This may take a while. Los Angeles is full of untold misery. A homeless man seems sick to me, and I can smell the years of hard distance. To who he is now, who he may have been. And all that stands between him and the bitter wind is chance. Is the kindness of a night nurse who let him sleep in peace, Los Angeles. It's full of good people, who from time to time can turn a blind eye to killer policy, and I wonder how bounce checks, free clinics, carry cash and leave the account in the negative stem between me and him. Me and the bitter wind, and if so, where would I go from Venice to San Francisco is now a war on the homeless, a war on the dispossessed. There are fewer and fewer options. They got shelters for women and children, all in ad for me. Just man up, homeboy. It's that concrete pillow, it's that cardboard blanket and freeze your ass to death. It's a city will leave to die on the same stretch of sidewalk with banks stretching to the sky. I wonder, as even now Skid Row is being gentrified as a city, as a system, as the pigs who feel past poverty, past hunger, past homelessness, to the very edge of existence on Skid Row, where all so-called complexities and economy are laid bare, where the rich are literally stacked upon the poor. Los Angeles is full of grotesque absurdity, especially on Skid Row, as the millions annually policing the misery of people with nowhere to go because your pockets are empty and you ain't got nothing, and change is not coming. Was no real difference between a booming metropolis and a barren desert. The little money passes by you, passes through you, as though you were just part of the scenery, protected in the knowledge they are serviced by pigs who speak the language of violence, the language of the nightstick, the language of untold misery. They will beat you for begging, beat you for sleeping, beat you for breathing, beat you for doing whatever it is you do to survive the night in the bitter wind, Los Angeles. I said Los Angeles. It's full of pigs. So San Francisco. Cops are like piñata sticks. I remember that shit from like I don't know anymore. They used to walk around like these piñata sticks. They weren't even like nightclubs. It was like a straight up wooden club. I mean, do you remember that like back in like 2011 or some shit? I was like, what the? This guy's got a fucking piñata stick out here. This is insane. This is horrible. This is horrible. I actually came up with the idea of all these little pigs while I was here in San Francisco because I noticed there were less. Oh. There were less cops. And I was like, yeah, you know, I was talking to Mark Lippman, but the first publisher I was talking to Mark was like, like, yeah, the cops are terrible, I'm saying anywhere, but like, there's less of them, they're everywhere, man. LA's full of pigs. Oh, shit. So, LA's full of pigs is the oldest poem in here, and it's probably the best one. So, this one's really good, shit.
So yes, at this point, I'd like to open up if anyone has any questions from the audience for Matt. In regards to City on the Second Floor or the previous collection, Mowing Leaves of Grass. Anyone? Yes, anyone? No. Okay. How about something? How about a treat as a little dessert for the audience? How about a poem from Mowing Leaves of Grass, if you will, to close us out?
All right. See, some were born in summer homes and palatial groves with pain. It was only sort of full from the pages of secret gardens spread from groves, but not I. See, I come from starry astronauts, beat the night sky with big dreams and wide eyes. I was running down the Devil's Highway through occupied America. On the way back to us on Mango Street. I was supposed to see on that street. With some handball off the back wall of Havana that we had born. East the river post Mendez versus Westminster, one generation with red lines. And diplomas that were signed at those dreams. And that skin need not apply. See, I come from struggle. And if my story offends you, as long as you made the mistake of seeking your reflection in my self-portrait, see this. What's going to be about me? Some are born to the Common Core, whose selected faces grace the pages of doctor-discovered age to be explored. World hardships crash against new shores, New England, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, others push off Turtle Island. Aslan, do not call this brown-skinned immigrant. Child of the sun, son of the conquest, Mexicano blood, running through the veins, east side of Los Angeles. Don't tell him when they told the song will best be sung. Do not tell me who I am, because I was raised like you. Miseducated in some of those very same schools off lessons and legends of honest Indians and Christian pilgrims and a nation of immigrants, all united in freedom. That's until they pulled aside my white friend, pointed directly at me and said, Scott, I judge you by the company you keep, and you spend your time with this. And the same old story, it's 1846. He drenched Uncle Sam with a stick up Manny wetback. Show me your papers, I'll give you your label, the melting pot. It's never made for the hands of cleaning. The American dream has always come at the expense of those who tucked it in. You know that. You don't teach it. Could write you a book but you won't read it. So this is about you. In 1492, in the Treaty of Guadalupe, California missions and Arizona schools, these racists that try to race us as their kids in cities that bear our names, that you can learn some days from Ferdinand to Minuteman, from Pio to Alamo, from Pope Buddha to Joaquin the Indian, that lives in me from May 8th to 43, trying to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds, Canadian minds, they didn't strike the Pandela, Zapata, Joaquin Rieta, that's Abuelitas, Brown Baresi, Zapatistas, Richard Nixon, they're Napoleon, from Peckinpah to Houston, from Rosa Republic to Christopher Columbus, all the way down to Donald Trump. We didn't cross the borders crossed us. Who you calling immigrants? Pilgrim?
All right. So yeah, I think it's only fair with the celebration of, so both of these books are for sale.
Yeah.
They are both available here. Please support Med, please support the venue. Yeah, let's go ahead and give a round of applause for Medicine for Nightmares. For hosting, please support, please purchase some copies. And give it up for Matt Sedillo. Who, yeah,